Okay. Good morning. Here we go
Good
again.
morning.
It's Tuesday. Conscious Conversations. Nikki is in Vegas. She's in Las Vegas at a conference, and so we've had this plan for a while that my son Braxton was going to jump in and join us on Conscious Conversations this morning and just share some insights of what it's like to be a Gen Z and to be a college kid and to be a student athlete and things he thinks his generation, is challenged by and gifts. And there's all kinds of stuff that we're going to jump in today. And so I'm proud that you were out of bed before 8:30, Brax.
Yeah, it was a challenge this morning.
it's, it's a, it's a good start. It's a good place to be.
Yep.
Um, Well, I mean, before we even jump in, I just think it'd be good to hear a little bit about who you are. You want to share a little bit about you and kind of why we're having this conversation, a little about your life, all that good stuff.
Yeah. I'm Braxton. I'm currently a student at Marian University in Indianapolis. I'm a business finance major with a pre-law program, and I also play football here. And I came to my mom about wanting to be on this. I just wanted to give some insight, and I was just always super interested in what she does. So I just wanted to get involved somehow. So
Hmm.
hopefully I can be here and kind of clear up some things, maybe give some insight to some people that need it. So this is pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, we were actually it surprised me, Brax, when we were in the car one day and you were like, one of my goals is to be on your podcast. And I'm like, really? Like, let's,
Yeah.
you know? I was surprised by that, and I think, I think as a parent, you just always assume your kids aren't all that interested in the things that you do. That's just kind of part of being a parent, you know? I feel like
Hmm.
your kids tend to be more interested in the lives of other people. So, that kind of made me feel good that you actually wanted to be on the show. So, glad that you're here. I think, why don't you kick us off with like, what do you think is just a really wrong assumption about Gen Zs? Like, what do you think other generations get wrong about your generation?
So I think typically the biggest stereotype that comes with my generation is like the thought that we're super lazy and like unmotivated. I think that's probably the most common one.
Mm,
Like people say they're constantly, they just want to scroll or like they don't want to go work or whatever. But I think that's wrong because I think the biggest difference is that Gen Z has so much things coming at them at one time that I don't think they're necessarily lazy, but rather just extremely overwhelmed.
mm, mhm,
Like I don't think we really don't have a choice but to like stay in the now and just keep like going with things. Like we're just constantly getting things thrown at us with technology and constant information. I don't think people can really stop like just constantly being overwhelmed by things.
mhm. It's interesting your generation is like the first that has always had kind of screens available to them. I mean, your whole life social media has existed for the most
Yeah.
part, and so I think it's really interesting like the accessibility of information where when I was growing up, I knew what was happening in my neighborhood. I knew what was happening at the school I went to. I could see the world through the television's eyes, but reality TV didn't exist. It was
Hmm.
like, got to watch shows. So there wasn't this constant comparison also of like what life was like for other people. And I just met a guy earlier this week who is going to be a guest on the podcast at some point in time, but he said that for the first time in the world's history, Gen Z kids are the same no matter the culture. That like their behavior patterns and it's the same no matter what culture. And it's because you all have been connected to each other. Like you
Hmm.
can see what the life of kids in another country that speak a different language even are like. So there's this accessibility thing. that I think is pretty interesting. I mean, for you, I always think of you as a pretty balanced young adult. Like, I feel like you do a pretty good job of balancing things, and so how do you manage that constant information so that you don't feel overwhelmed, or do you feel overwhelmed at times?
I would say at times I feel overwhelmed, but I also have times where maybe other college students that aren't athletes, like they, because I'm being forced, to get off the screens and, go work out or be in a meeting or have practice. So there's multiple hours throughout my day that I'm not on a screen. But and that's, I guess, the best thing for me because I will admit it's addicting. Like I'm on my phone a lot. Like
Mhm,
even through all that, I still have 4 or 5 hours of screen time on my phone. So,
mhm,
but
mhm.
I think for some people that don't have that, person on to like tell them to get off, that they're just going to be constantly on their screens and constantly overloaded with different information.
Do you have a sense when you're like, "I've been on my screen for too long," or "I need to turn it off," or, do you ever get that sense within you?
Yes, I do, like, because sometimes when you're going on TikTok, it'll tell you about your screen time or whatever, and I'll be like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I should probably get off," and then I don't get off.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's hard, it really is, it's hard to get off TikTok.
It's well, it's designed to keep you pulled in, and the dopamine effect. I mean, there's a book that I just downloaded that I look forward to reading more about that's called Dopamine Nation, and it's all about our addiction to dopamine. And yeah, it's designed to keep us hooked in and designed to keep us scrolling. I don't know if you've ever tried this, Brax. I have this on my phone. Maybe you've seen it. I don't live with it on all the time, I will say, but like you can turn your phone into black and white mode, and it's interesting how it does not have the same dopamine effect, therefore it's not as addicting.
Really?
Mhm. When you scroll and it's black and white, there's not all the color does not draw you in and want you to stay in the loop. And also, here's another fun fact maybe for, anybody who is a sucker for the ads, like for buying things, like you are not enticed to wanna buy things because you don't see the bright, shiny object in front of you. It's just black and white. So it kinda takes all the engagement out of it.
It's
So,
interesting.
that's kind of a fun way that, if you're looking to help with your phone addiction, that's one little hack that you can go in and put into play. So, let's jump into, I mean, you're in college, you've got a
Mhm.
chance to see, just how, like, many kids your age show up, what they prioritize. There's some stats out there, that Gen Z has higher anxiety and depression than any generation before, and I don't know if that is just because we've taught you guys to be more, emotionally aligned, where other generations weren't taught to even talk about their emotions. So I wonder how much of that is, the state of your generation versus your emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
However, there's the status 42% say that they feel anxious or depressed most days. Do you see that? What do you see that in others? Like, have you seen that in friends or in other kids you go to school with where they seem super anxious or stressed or depressed? And what do you think makes that stat higher?
Yeah, I've definitely seen it, like, in school and just out of really anyone, like, especially during quarantine, like, it feels like everyone was like that, you know?
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and I think one big thing about this is, like, in today's society with technology, I feel like everything is constantly being measured, like, whether that be, like, followers or likes or just, like,
mhm.
any type of social status, like it's just constantly being measured, and I feel like people just don't feel like what they're doing is enough, and I feel like they see stuff that maybe other people are doing or what they have, and it just makes everyone feel, like, a little bit worse, so, um, people say, like, comparison is the thief of joy,
Yeah.
and I think social media does that. is pretty bad at doing that because people will just constantly see what they don't have.
Mhm. Yeah, I can you talked about COVID, and I remember that you went through a struggle. I don't know if you can see it now, like, looking back that you were struggling. I know then you didn't see it that way, but I definitely saw a change in your behavior, like, you didn't wanna come out of your room. You got frustrated really easily, and I would imagine it just felt so isolating to be home constantly and to not be around any of your friends and to, it must have felt really it must have felt so strange to experience that.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever experience something like that again. At least I hope not.
Let's hope not. It was isolating for so many people, and then you went back to school and you guys had to live in masks for a year, and, you know,
Yeah.
that's another just strange part, which creates also more of a disconnection. Watching somebody's mouth move, there's something in that that helps us feel more connected to that person and develop deeper trust. And so there's all kinds of like psychological strains that I think happened for us during that time of COVID. And I mean, do you feel like people talk about it? Do you hear friends or fellow students or teammates, do they ever talk about being anxious or feeling stressed out? Does
Yeah, just say that they don't really put it like as straightforward as that, you know?
Mhm,
Maybe some you'll just be sitting in the cafeteria and you'll just hear some people like saying maybe something about, how their practice went and like maybe they're anxious about like a certain matchup for this week or like a play in the O-line room that maybe someone's not understanding, like, but I wouldn't say that it's as direct as you would think, like,
mhm,
at least from what I can see as like person to person standpoint. But I feel like online, you could definitely see people like they would make TikToks or Instagram posts or whatever about how they're actually feeling, and it kind of like shows you that, you know what I mean?
mhm. What do you do, like, when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, what's some of your go-to practices?
Definitely just get away and hang out with my friends. I think just talking to them, like doing whatever, like watching like, sporting event or like playing basketball or just whatever. I feel like they've always been my escape.
Mhm, mhm. And for, like, if you're working around, if you're working around Gen Z, or maybe you're teaching Gen Z, or maybe you're parenting Gen Z, what do you think that your generation needs more of from the adults that support them?
Um, I personally think that they need to be as straightforward and honest as possible because I feel like some people my age just they feel super lost right now,
Mhm,
like with what they're doing. And I just think that the adults in their life just need to be honest, like because they didn't have perfect lives at this point. Like I
mhm,
just think they need to be honest and tell them like they were also having hardships at 19 years old.
mhm,
I think that would be super helpful just for someone to hear that they have a commonality with someone that they're really close with. So,
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I've always wondered, and hopefully we've created a safe space for you to share that, but, like, "Hey, what do you need more of from me or your dad? What kind of support?" What do you need us to encourage you with?" But
mhm.
it is it is true. I mean, I think the pressure to have all of life figured out and to feel like you know exactly what you're doing, that is the lie of adulthood that many of us believe. When I'm adult, I'm just gonna have life figured out. And in truth, you will have so many bouts in life of being lost and found because that's just part of evolving as an adult, where life is hard and it's challenging, but you learn the most about yourself during those times because you do not grow in comfort. Comfort is where you get to ride the wave of the hard you've already experienced. Like, in anything, like learning how to walk. Guess what? You had to bump your head and fall down and skin your knees a ton of times. You had to endure that hard so that you could learn how to walk comfortably. And
Mhm.
This is just it is the path of life, and going through hardships is not proof that you're failing or that you don't know what you're doing. It's just proof that you're growing. So I do hope that adults share that with kids more often. Just none of us are ever going to fully have it figured out. That's just part of being human.
Yeah.
Wish we did, but it's part of being human. We have a question that came through in the chat, and I think this is a really solid question. What do you think is a reasonable age for kids to have phones or social media?
Okay, this is interesting. So I got my first iPod, and I think it was maybe fourth grade.
Because you weren't allowed to have a phone, but we let you have
Right.
an iPod. Yes.
Yeah, and I just played games on there. I
Uh-huh.
think social media is definite. I think having a phone or like an iPad in elementary school is okay, but I think social media it should probably be maybe like seventh or eighth grade for social media personally.
And why do you think that?
I think because really in elementary school is whenever you're truly trying to like find out what it means to be social. Um, at least from my standpoint, that's where I really learned a lot of like social habits and like I don't know. I just feel like elementary school is pure, you know? I feel
Mhm.
like social media might but at the same time, there's I'm sure there's kids in, you know, first or second grade with a phone now, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. It's a personal choice. I remember we were pretty adamant that you weren't getting phones till you were 13 or maybe 6th grade once you moved into middle school. I think was our ruling. And I do remember I also held off on Snapchat for a long time. I would not let you guys have
Yeah.
Snapchat. Uh, I think social media is pretty damaging, and the longer you can hold off, the better. I mean, it's such a primer of the brain. The brain is in such a learning mode, especially those first 7 years of life. There's so much hardwiring happening in the mind. So the more that we can teach kids how to be bored, I mean, that's the thing, Brex. Do you ever remember I remember I have this distinct memory. You and I were talking about this not long ago that you loved YouTube. You loved YouTube. You loved, I mean, anything on, YouTube. And I remember saying, Brax, you have to go outside. You have been in this house all day. You've been watching YouTube for too long. And you're probably, what do you think? Like 8, maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah. Around there.
Yes, and I was very adamant you had to go outside, and so I hear the door open, I hear you go outside, I'm like, "Okay, good, he's out there playing," and I go outside and you're laying on the front porch watching YouTube, and you said, do you remember that?
I do remember this, yeah.
You said, "You just told me I had to go outside," like, you are king of the loopholes, and so I think I think boredom is such a gift because it helps us be a good creative problem solver. And can you remember ever being truly bored?
Yeah, because you just went on that retreat, you know, the silent retreat, and you were talking
Yeah.
about how you get to truly feel what being bored is like. And I
Mhm,
that made me think of like, when am I ever bored, you know? Like, and
mhm,
then it made me think of like when I was younger, when I would get grounded and get stuff taken away, I was like, oh, that was when I was bored. But even then, I was still finding ways like I would like read or
mhm.
like do something. So yeah, I don't know when I've ever truly been bored. Like,
Usually on the
yeah,
other side of boredom, there is like innovation that comes or creativity that comes on the other side of boredom. However, in the silent retreat I went on, you had very little you were not the goal was not to distract yourself. The goal was to meet yourself
right,
in whatever experience you were having. So it was fascinating to see how stillness met you on the other side of boredom, and it felt like a total like energetic reset. It really felt like a nervous system reset, which was so cool. I just ended up sitting there watching a butterfly fly around for who knows how long. It was like and it was so great. I was like so plugged into the moment. There are some additional questions coming in. I am curious, Braxton. I don't know if you're a podcast listener or not. Do you kind of hear any like podcast or books or resources that your generation uses to kind of help navigate just life?
Hmm. I really don't listen to any informative podcasts. I've listened to some about various hobbies that I'm interested in. I listened to a podcast on how to be a good learner. Um, but other than that, I don't really know. No one really talks to me about listening to podcasts. And I feel like, believe it or not, where I think most people are getting their information is from TikTok
I was
nowadays.
gonna ask, like, yeah, is there a creator then that because I think that's what your generation's gonna go for, right? They're gonna go for creators, whether it's YouTube, which
Yeah,
even YouTube in its long form, I don't think holds the attention the attention span gets shorter and shorter with these quick
yeah.
form videos. But is there a creator that people tend to be gravitated towards or like inspired by?
I I just feel like people in Gen Z are typically going to lean towards people that have more followers and more likes. Like, I feel
Mm,
like they are going to believe people that have more followers and more likes than anyone else because it's like a status and
mhm.
that's just what they're going to believe. So I don't have any like direct like names, but like from that standpoint, that's where I feel like people are leaning towards to get their information. Like if you go on the TikTok search bar, you can look up anything and just scroll through videos on said topic.
Yeah.
Um,
And whatever has the most views, you'll probably believe is the most legitimate.
yeah, yeah,
It's
exactly.
so interesting. I think what is likely missing now, and it's probably not just Gen Z, I think it's anybody who's chronically online or connected to, just a world outside of themselves, is we are gonna really have to learn how to come back into our own discernment, into our own authenticity, because if we're constantly just seeing ourselves through the world outside of us and what the world tells us to be and what's important and what's popular, then we chase a life that isn't even designed for us, right? So coming back to
Hmm.
learning truly who am I? What do I want? What are my unique gifts? Who am I authentically? I think that's going to be what Gen Z is really going to be searching for. I think that's going to be the ultimate disconnect. So, how can another question that came through is, what can adults in your life do to help you feel seen and heard and understood?
Hmm. I think the one of the biggest things is sometimes it's okay to just listen. Maybe if someone is like talking to them about something, it's okay to not have an answer. Maybe it's
Mm,
like something that is kind of confusing and that the adult doesn't understand. Like it's okay to not have an answer. Like Gen Z isn't always looking for an answer, but maybe just someone to just talk to, you know?
mhm, mhm. It's always so helpful. I mean, just in communication in general, whether you're leading a team or leading a household or whatever, when somebody comes to you to say, "Are you sharing this what role would you like me to play? Would you like me to just listen? Are you looking for my advice?" And just ask what people need of you. And then that way, kind of what hat to put on for them. So I think
Yeah.
that's a certainly a helpful reminder. Well, let's talk about the positives. I know we've talked about the struggles, but what do you feel like Gen Z is doing to help reshape the world in a positive way?
Yeah, so we talk about like the information overload at the start, like,
Uh-huh.
but at the same time, like with having information constantly at our fingertips, like I feel like Gen Z is gonna really grow from like a materialistic standpoint. I feel like people are gonna be super innovative and they're gonna be prepared for things that are thrown at them, and like I just feel like things are gonna be able to grow.
Mhm.
Um, and I actually wrote down in this notes, when I was doing my rehab last week, my trainer Katie, who's 22, she's a student at Purdue, and she's doing some work through Marion, and I was doing my rehab, and halfway through it, she came up to me and gave me a different exercise that she found on TikTok, like just
Mm,
right there. And I instantly felt like my legs were they were getting tired because it was hard, but it was actually helping.
mm,
So I think that's like a good point that I feel like Gen Z is there. We know how to navigate what we're doing. I feel like technology is actually going to help from
mhm,
that standpoint.
mhm. I think there is an adaptation, to your point, and you and I were talking about this last week when we were just chatting about having this conversation that like you've grown up in a fast-paced tech changing environment and so you've learned how to adapt with that and technology's not going to slow down. Like it's going to continue to grow and so you've got the benefit of having lived in it so it's not as scary where other generations it's new and it's different and think of like Gen X and baby boomers. Like for Gen X the internet came out when they were teenagers. For baby boomers they were adults. And so yeah, I think that adaptability is really cool. I think I would love to know, I mean for you and the future of yourself, but maybe it's also your generation, like what kind of world do you wanna help create?
This is interesting.
Just
I think
light questions on a Tuesday morning. Yeah.
personally, I think one thing that you've always installed in me, and I think that's kind of reflecting, um, I want Gen Z to live from a work standpoint. I want to work off of like purpose and
Mm,
passion.
mm,
Like I want people to work and I want it to be meaningful and I want them to actually want to get better and grow instead of just looking for a number or a salary.
mhm, mhm. I think that yeah, money is sexy for so long. Like we need it. We need it to feel stable and to survive. It's a requirement of survival. However, it is not the path to joy. It's I know many people who have what's affectionately called the golden handcuffs. They're making so much money in a job that they hate, but they feel like they can't ever leave. And then a company kind of owns you, right?
Yeah.
They own all of you. And I think what's cool about your generation is they see what other generations have done and that they work, you know, 8 to 5, 40 plus hours a week and they kind of like life becomes their work and their whole identity. And I think Gen Zs are more attracted to work is not your identity. Like work gets to be plugged into your identity. It does not become your identity. And I think that's going to be incredibly helpful in the future of work. Really
Yeah.
helpful. Anything else that you want to share? What's, any other kind of closing wisdom to share for anybody who might listen to this?
Um, yeah, I think last week we were taught you asked me, do I think technology is good or bad?
Yeah.
Um, and I really did think on that, and so I have some notes here just to talk about that. And I think um I don't think technology is good or bad. You know, I kind of said that, and I think it
Mhm.
has its pros and cons. But what I really think about technology is that it's just powerful, you know?
Mm,
Like in a stance that it's not really good or bad, but it's just a powerful resource.
mhm.
And like Uncle Ben says in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think that technology is what you make of it. It can be a great thing or it can be a bad thing. You know, it can make you smarter, it can help you grow, or you could get caught in a loop and it could drag you down. So,
Mhm. It's such a good reflection of anytime we're engaging with technology, is this an enhancement? Is it adding on to me, or is this a replacement? Is this an enhancement or is this a replacement? I think if it's a replacement, then it means I'm replacing feeling this uncomfortable feeling and I'm just going to numb out and scroll because that feels better. Or I'm replacing boredom with this. I'm replacing,
hmm
if it's a replacement, I think that's when it's likely working against us, or even replacing our own inner knowledge. Like I'm going to chat GPT. Is this a replacement or an enhancement? Maybe I say that out loud really as a reminder to myself too, to check in with me and to see, what am I using this technology for? And just to be conscious. That's how we become more conscious beings, by being aware and being curious, and getting those lessons learned. So, well, thank you. I'm sure I would love to have more of these conversations, as relevant topics come up. And thank you for getting out of bed before your usual time and prepping for this, and sharing, your own reflections. It was really fun to have you on.
yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Love you, buddy. Have a good day.
Love you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.